why we are discussing this is one of the Cisco has been pushing hard on the automation front, and Cisco NSO is NSO, which stands for Network Services Orchestrator, is one of the key tools in their set of automation suites. Right, the other ones being Cisco DNS Center, DNAC, Cisco ACI, Application Centric Infrastructure. There is a bit of confusion among Cisco itself, like how exactly these tools fit into the entire automation ecosystem. There is a lot of debate, like whether each of these tools complement each other, whether they compete with each other. Right? Slowly, the clarity will come. Even when the clarity comes, and let's say they add new features to ACI or DNAC, some of which can be done using NSO, then again there'll be a blurred lines, right? There's no clear-cut distinction. Okay, this should be used for this. This should be used for this. Right? Best way is check what is the use case that we have at hand, automation use case, and refer to Cisco guides, Cisco forums, Cisco documentation, which is what is the best way, which is the best tool that can be used for automating this. So that's the way we have to go about it. But one, how's it now? Okay, just give me a minute. How's it now? Thanks for reminding by annotating. I've disabled that as well. Okay, great. Yeah. So as I was saying, the final conclusion is there are some areas in which these tools could compete with each other, but it's up to the network automation architect whether how well he will be using these tools to complement each other, right? Depending on the use case, we have to pick the best tool that is available for us. So with that background, we have to jump into this tool called as Cisco NSO. And we are discussing Yang because Cisco NSO primarily uses something called as Yang. And we'll see what these are. And these are some links which will supplement this lecture, using which you can practice the concepts that we are discussing, right? Which are Cisco has done a pretty good job in terms of building these developer guides along with the sample lab in their on their machines itself, like the sandbox itself. So either you can download and install NSO, or you can use Cisco Sandbox itself for you to practice. Right. So these guides will help you to do that, and the guides will look something like this, right? Topic by topic, the navigation, and then for each topic, this is the explanation, and this is the kind of environment where you can practice. These are the files. There's the code editor, though it's not very user friendly because they try to cram everything into a single browser editor. This is the terminal, right? So this can be used to a pretty good extent to gain understanding of most of the concepts. Beyond that, we can install NSO on our local machines. It's a pretty lightweight. It's a simple Linux application which can just be downloaded and installed. Okay. So that these links will give you to that. I mean, point you to this to Cisco's developer guides, on the Learning Center. Okay. So what is Cisco NSO? To put things into perspective, it is a Linux application which orchestrates the configuration lifecycle of the devices. As network engineers, what we are doing most of the times, we are configuring network devices, we are modifying the configuration, we are changing the configuration, we are ensuring that the network devices always have the required configuration, the golden configuration, which is required for them to be up and running and keep performing the tasks that they are meant for, right? So if this process can be automated to a large extent, our life would be much simpler. So all the effort that Cisco has been putting in terms of automation is towards that end. So we have yet another suite in this automation products, which is a network services orchestrator. So its primary objective is to orchestrate the configuration lifecycle of physical and virtual machines. So we are dealing with physical machines and virtual machines, and the configuration has a life cycle, which means you create a configuration, you modify it, at some point it is not required, you delete it. So the configuration follows a certain life cycle. So if you have some product automation suite of products which will help you to deal this configuration changes at that life cycle level, right? It will be much simpler in terms of, okay, we treat this configuration as a kind of living object. You create a configuration, you modify it, you make changes to it, and finally, when it's time to decommission, remove those settings, delete that configuration. So it works at a much higher level of abstraction. Okay? So that is one of the things that that best describes what is NSO. Another thing is NSO gathers, it parses and stores the configuration state of network devices that it manages, right? Primarily, NSO can manage a bunch of devices. And what it can do with those devices, it can gather the configuration settings from those machines. It can parse that configuration settings, and it can store them in an internal database called as CDB, configuration database. Then, as I said, right, to manage the life cycle, it provides the CRUD operations, create, read, update, delete kind of operations with respect to this network configuration in a programmatic way or through APIs, either through scripting or through APIs. Now, these operations can be performed in two ways. One is either using ad hoc commands or using something called as services, right? We'll see both of them. Ad hoc commands, how NSO will help you to manage this configuration using ad hoc commands, as well as by creating something called as a service. Okay, how does it work? Now, Cisco NSO is a multi-vendor application, which means it can work not only with Cisco devices, it can work with majority of the other vendor devices as well, other major vendor devices as well. Right? Now, how does it do? It does this using something called as some elements, some components called as NEDs, Network Element Drivers. The term is maybe they chose this because it makes it sound complicated, but to put it in simple terms, these are like plugins. These are like plugins which will help you to work with other devices. So if you have been reading about network automation, or if you're familiar with network automation libraries in Python, like Netmico, Napalm, these are all these are also multi-vendor libraries. How they work, which means they can automate configurations, automate operations on multiple devices. How they do it? Right? Netmico has code written which knows how to connect to different types of devices like Cisco and then issue commands as per the Cisco CLI format. Then if it connects to Juniper, it can issue commands in Juniper's this thing. Same way, Napalm is another Python library which can work with multiple vendors. Same way, Cisco NSO also is a multi-vendor platform, which means it should have some agents, some elements which knows how to talk to different devices. Right? It's like a translators. These are like translators. Right? On one side you have Cisco NSO. On the other side you have Cisco devices, Juniper devices, Arista devices, some other devices, etc., etc. So from the CLI point of view, though at a very high level abstraction level, the language that all of them talk is the same. Right? The network configuration, right? They talk about ACLs, they talk about setting host name, changing passwords, configuring interfaces. Ultimately, those are all the same. But when you go down to the CLI level, the exact commands that you need to give depend on the specific OS, then the network OS. So from that point of view, they all talk different languages. Now, Cisco NSO has to automate this process across multiple vendors, which means it needs some guys, it needs agents who can understand. Now, one agent for Cisco who can understand Cisco's CLI language and interact with it. Another agent for Cisco, another agent for Arista, another agent for Juniper, another agent for some other device that you have. Those agents are nothing but these NEDs, network element drivers. Okay, so NSO uses software packages called as network element drivers. Using NEDs, NSO facilitates connecting to different devices via different protocols like Telnet, SSH, or APIs at a very high level. NEDs provide an abstraction layer that read the device's running configuration and parse it into a data model, validated snapshot into CDP. What this statement is saying is, now I have NSO, NSO internally has a configuration database. Right now it is blank. Now I have a bunch of devices which I've configured in NSO, which means NSO knows about those devices. What NSO using these NEDs, network element drivers, can do is read the configuration from different devices, parse it. Now, Cisco iOS NED reads the configuration as per iOS format. Another NED reads it as per its format. Now, these NEDs are reading this configuration in different formats. Now, that has to be converted into a common template, common language, because it doesn't make sense to store 10 different versions of the 10 different devices in CDP. So there should be one common format. So it converts it into that common format and pushes it into CDP. So that's one thing that NSO can do via these NEDs. And it can also do reverse. We can define configuration in a common template in NSO, which these NEDs, different NEDs, can take, go and apply to different devices. Right? It facilitates this two-way operation. NSO can read configuration data from different devices, push it after parsing and validating it. It can push it into configuration database. Or let's say we have directly added some configuration settings to the CDB. NSO can push this configuration via NEDs to different devices, right? Vice versa of the read operation. No, it can work with other devices as well. Draw and show. Okay, Just give me a minute. Let me connect. I'm not sure what is RCM, but I'll check it and let me know. I have not heard so far whether RCM is part of NSO. Yes, it's when finally things are getting stored in CDB, it gets stored in a unified format. It's just single configuration that can be defined in CDB in a unified format, which can be pushed to different vendors. Well, it supports any device for which Cisco has built an NED. Right? Currently, if Cisco decides there is a legacy device which needs to be supported via NSO and NED has already built for it, it can connect to it. Which means the support depends on the NEDs that are already written and available. These NEDs are nothing but software packages. If Cisco decides, it can write those NEDs. Same way, any other device can be supported as long as there's an NED for that. Basically, the driver, just like how your laptop supports different devices, provided there's a driver for it. It's the same. Right? If there is a driver for it, it can support. NED will take care of it. I think we can build nets, but that requires programming knowledge as well as in-depth information of the target system. Just a minute, there's a lot of background. Yes, there should be, because these are more popular devices, there should be. We'll see what comes packaged with the installation and what can be downloaded and installed. Oh, my. No, it is not same as Ansible Tower. Ansible Tower is totally different. Probably At a very high level, we can compare them both because both of them can be used for configuration management, but Ansible is more generic. Yes, I'll be sharing the document. Ansible is more generic, and it can also be used to work with to configure Linux devices, not just network devices. Ansible Tower is just a UI on top of it, on top of Ansible, built by Red Hat guys. This is taking time. No, it's free. You can download it for free of cost. Let's say these are different devices. Each of them has a CLI, right? So which will help you to interact with the underlying operating system. So the kind of commands that you need to give here is different, here it is different, here it is different. So if you're manually configuring these things, you have a common configuration, right? Which needs to be pushed to these devices. So what you have to do, you need to make 3 copies of it, right? I mean, I'm just explaining one very basic example. Now with Cisco NSO in place, right? You can just define it in one format, which gets stored in the CDP. Then we have NEDs, right? Next, Cisco Net, Juniper Net, Arista Net. So we hand over this thing to these NEDs. Right? So these NEDs know how to talk the language of each of these underlying pieces. So they convert this into the ultimate, the final CLI commands and then pushes the configuration. And the reverse is also possible, right? NEDs can read the configuration from this, bring it back and parse it and put it in a unified format in CDB. Right. Yes, NSO is idempotent. Obviously, I mean, that is one of the prerequisites because it cannot cause errors by reapplying the configuration settings. Of course, the underlying devices themselves will not allow. Okay. So, it's primarily on-prem. It can be used on cloud also, I guess. I need to explore that. Okay. Where am I? This is your NSO. These are your devices. These are their nets, and you have the CDP here, providing two-way communication. Oh, okay. This itself is enough. Okay, okay. Hope you got the idea. I'm not very good at drawing. We'll be doing the NSO. Is it on the device that we look for? No, NSO sits outside on the on any system, just like how you install Python, Ansible, right? So you by using NSO, you try to manage the devices. No, NADs are very much integral to NSO, so they don't have existence outside the. That become, I mean, if NADs can exist outside NSO, they become like Python libraries, right? So there are ample number of Python libraries outside there, so we can treat them as NSO, which can handle the configuration of different devices. Similar to SNMP. SNMP is for a totally different purpose, right? Network management protocol, simple network management protocol. That's more for monitoring purpose. I'm not sure. I've not used it much. Yes, you can write NED. I've not explored it, but if you know the probably at least good at one by programming language, you can develop because they are ultimately software packages. Yes, yes, we need to add. We'll come to that. We need to add the devices in NSO. Yes, it's used for automation. Okay. Let's switch back to the topic. Okay. Now install the Cisco NSO. This is there's a detailed guide how to install it. Now this is a Java-based application. So first you need to install Java using this command. Then it uses something called as Apache Ant. So you need to install this. Then it also uses Python. You need to install Python, and then these are a kind of prerequisite tools to be installed before you can install NSO. And download and NSO which is suitable for your OS. So there are for each OS. Okay, this is directly my link. For this is for Apple. This is for Linux, right? So from here, and these are the NEDs, right? For ASA, iOS, Nexus. Yeah, it's free. At least when I downloaded it a couple of days back. If you're lucky, you'll still get it for free. Okay, locate the installer for your this thing and click on the download button. Once downloaded, we go to pretty much standard instructions which are given on the site. Suppose you downloaded it to the downloads folder, CD to that, and unpack it. This comes as a packaged version. First, you need to unpack to get the binary outside. So which you do using SH and then pointing to the downloader. Then the files get unpacked. Let me see if I have those files. Okay. I'm here and then CD downloads. Yes. Yeah. So these I downloaded this for my operating system, and then I did SH and then this. So let me do it. Which is unpacking. So it has unpacked. And it puts this binary in this place. Now, once you have the binary, again, how to install it, you can invoke this command. Just call the SH and then the binary file with --l. You get some instructions, and this is the command to install it using ---- local install. There are two types of install. One is server install, one is local install. Server install is it server install or yeah, I think server install. Server install is like it just adds them to the services, so that when you restart the system, the NSO service is always up and running. So unless you are planning to use it for some serious purposes, I would not recommend installing it in server mode, because whenever you start up the machine, NSO is up and running, simply eating your resources, even if you do not plan to use it. So it's better to install in local install mode, so that whenever we want to work with it, we'll start up the services and then use it. So just call the binary file with the installation mode ---- local install and specify the installation directory. Okay, so let me install it in a different directory than what I have it. I had installed it in NSO. Inside NSO. Now I'll install it in a different. Download /this / local install. So do we need to download nets? Not as of now. There are few nets which come by default pre-packaged with this. You have to download individually. What do you mean by individually? Yes, you have to download. I mean, nets, no. There are some which come pre-packaged. Additionally, if you want, you can download individually. Need license? No. NEDs for other vendors are also available at Cisco site, or do we need to write? You cannot write. I don't think it's that simple writing that NED. But yes, there might be some guides on how to go about writing NEDs, because you just think of what NED is doing, right? So NED is taking the common configuration language and translating it into underlying this thing, which means you should thoroughly understand what is that common configuration language and what is the underlying operating system language that it speaks. Your NED is like a bridge between them, right? Though it sounds kind of compiler. Yes, you can compare it to compiler, which translates from one language to the other, but ultimately you got what NED is doing, right? It should provide two-way communication between the underlying device and this. So yes, I mean, you can certainly write it, but I don't think it is that simple a task. Okay, so you see, installation is pretty much easy. We take this and unpack it into some folder. Then from that folder, since my binary is lying in downloads folder, from downloads, I'm invoking it and specifying the mode, installation mode, and giving the target directory. Now I should have NSO_1, ls NSO_1. So I have my NSO installed. NSO was earlier called as NCS. Probably Cisco, someone else built this application. They called it as NCS. Probably, I don't know what NCS stands for, but later the Cisco guys have rechristened it to NSO. So though they call it as NSO, all the underlying scripts, right? They still are there with NCS, NCS underscore this, and this NCS hyphen that, NCS hyphen something else. So everywhere you see NCS, right? So, and accordingly, you also see this, just like how you have profile RC or bash RC, they have provided one script, NCS RC, to set this NSO, add this NSO to path, so that you can start using those NCS commands. And here, if I give NCS commands, it says command not found. So first we have to invoke this file using source NCS. I have to move to the directory first. CD source NCS RC. Now we can start. So at least it has identified what is NCS. It is saying, yeah, I mean, NCS is like a command to start up my server. NSO is an application which I just installed it. I have to start it. I have to start the background process of the server, which keeps listening and then starts processing the commands. So that this is what this command does that. But of course, we have to be in certain folder and certain configuration files have to be available. But just to test that, I've done this. Now, if I exit this and come back, okay, I'm in this. Now, here, if I give this, it says command NCS not found, which means what I have the file which I've added to my environment path, which sets these commands in path is gone. Again, I have to do source NCS RC. Now my commands will be recognized. Okay, this is something that you need to since we installed it in local. Or the other way is just take this file and add it at the end of your bash RC. Right? That way, whenever you start a new shell, your commands are recognized and ready to start using the commands. If you don't want to fiddle around with your existing bash RC, you just have to remember, come to the NSO installation directory and call the RC file, NCS RC file. Okay, so we are done with the installation. Yeah, ensure that installation is successful. Look at the contents of NSO packages nets directory to see what all nets have been shipped. ls packages nets. Okay. So these are the ones which they shipped by default. A10, ALU, then a bunch of Cisco, then Dell FTOS, Juniper, Junos. Why only this? Why not something else? Probably, we don't know, right? Why Cisco guys have just packaged these and nothing else. Docker container, if someone has built it, we can install it on Docker. Or what we can do is, see, now we have installed this on Ubuntu, plain Ubuntu machine. We can export this as a Docker image. We can create a Docker image from this, and then you will have your Docker NSO as available as a Docker image. We can check if I think it should be available. Docker image for NSO. Yeah, it is there. I think there's something that you can explore. Okay, go to NSO installation folder and execute the following command to add NSO to executable path. So that I've given cd NSO and source this. Now we are ready to start using NSO commands. And let's start with its earlier name NSO. The first thing that we can do is set up your instance using ncs-setup. ncs-setup. Now, this is a little bit tricky. Again, for setting up, there is a process called setting up NCS where you need to specify a destination directory. Though we have already started it, it creates certain files called as packages, etc., etc. So we need to run this by again specifying a destination directory, which can be this itself. And here, let's. Now, let's switch to the Cisco's guide and go from there. There's extra space between. Okay. That's a good catch. Okay. -+ package, add package to the set of packages loaded by NCS at startup. This option can be given to multiple times. Package can be a directory or just the name of one of the built-in NED packages. So Cisco has a concept of packages. So later we'll be creating some services. Services are like abstraction of configuration settings. And NEDs. So these NEDs are again like software packages. So they all reside in. They are all categorized as NSO packages. So if you want to create a new package, we can use this. Then for development purposes, right? NSO provides a utility called as network simulator, using which you can create simulated devices or a simulated network. Right? The tool used for this is called as NetSim. Okay, so let's switch to Cisco's this thing. Yeah, if you do not want to install, as I've said in the beginning, right? If you do not want to install NSO, you still have a way, right? Go to the links which I've given. Click on this. Start from the at the very beginning. NSO introduction, getting started. Then click this. You get this your documentation, the instructions, and here you get your environment. Right now it is, and this is this environment is on the Cisco sandbox. So once I say start learning, it gets activated, and at any point of time, it gives you for 119 minutes. After 119 minutes, there's nothing to worry. You just refresh the browser. Again, your next session starts for 119 minutes. So there's an interactive introduction to Cisco NSO, Network Services Orchestrator. What it is, industry-leading orchestration platform for hybrid networks. So it says hybrid, which means both on-premise as well as cloud. We'll first walk through setting up a development instance of NSO, and then we'll run through basic tutorial that demonstrates a few of the main features. What are those main features? Managing the devices, configuring the devices, creating services. Right? Managing devices means adding a device to NSO. Configuring devices is sending some configuration commands. Services is a kind of concept using which you can create a wrapper on top of your underlying config commands. Let's say you have a bunch of config commands which needs to be sent to multiple devices. One way is either you can specify them in a CDD format and then let NEDs push those to this. The other way is we can create something called as a service. Now that service name becomes like your command line utility. You can call it as, let's say, my config. In my config, I am setting a host name of the devices, and I'll be changing the username and I'll be creating a user and setting his password. I can club these things, these three things, and call it as basic config service, right? Create a service by following a set of steps, which we are going to see. I can create that. Once I create that service, I can, using that service name basic config. Now that basic config becomes like my CLI command. So I can log into Cisco NSO admin mode and give a command like basic config, username this, basic config, host name this, basic config, password this. So I can use the service as if it's my command line argument. So that is the concept of services. We'll see that. NSO can be installed in Windows. I've not found an installer, but I think it is not there. Yeah, it's a Linux application, as we discussed in the beginning, right? It's a Linux-based application, so it's available for Mac in the form of a Darwin for Linux. Okay, once you are here and understand these things, let's start learning. Okay, my session has expired, so I just need to refresh it. Python anyway, you can't escape. You have to learn anyway Python, right? Irrespective of what you want to do. You want to server as a network automation engineer, you have to learn Python. Okay. Yeah. So it comes with a utility called as NetSim. Now we are like, we have not yet started with NSO. Before starting with NSO, we need some devices for us to start start managing with NSO, right? So that part we are doing. Now, since we do not have access to either real devices or virtual devices, I'm creating a simulated devices. So I'm using a tool called as NetSim, which will create some simulated network. So I'm saying I have already installed NSO. So it recognizes this NSO netsim command and then say create network. Now to create this network, what type of network to create? This is the name of the NED. Create network with this type of devices. Cisco iOS CLI 3.8. How many devices to create? 2. Was the folder, was the prefix iOS. I think we skipped the installation part because we have already covered it. Yeah, that's a good place to start. So either since we are already here, I'll show it. So the beauty of this tool is you don't have to, ideally I would say you should type this command, because while typing it gets in, you'll start getting used to these commands. But they are making us lazy. You just click this command gets pasted here, and it also gets executed. Right? So NCS NetSim is a NSO tool to create simulated network using the simulated devices of this type. How many? 2. Right? The prefix used is iOS. So it's calling this 2 devices have been created, device iOS 0 and iOS 1. What are these devices? They are Cisco iOS CLI 3.8 devices. Now we have to, this is what is the tricky part I said, right? So first we installed NSO, then we started the server. Now we have to create something called as an NSO instance. So these many levels of abstraction sometimes confuse people by we are giving too many commands. Right? So this, we can think of it like, if you're familiar with databases, right? If you install Oracle or some other database, what you have installed is the software. There is no database. You have to go and create databases inside the software. Right? So it is something like that. We have installed NSO, then we have to set up an NSO instance inside it, inside which we have to go and work. And to be able to do all this, we have to start the service, NSO service, using the NCS command. So now what we are doing is we are setting up a NSO instance. Since we have our devices, we are setting up this. And we are saying for the purpose of setting up, use this directory, NetSim directory. So this is where the devices are created. So use these devices. So NSO's scope is now these devices. Now we are starting those devices by, here you see these devices are just created. They are not yet started. So we are starting the network using NCS NetSim start. So it is starting up my devices. Because iOS 0, okay, started. Okay, NSO itself is not started. We just set it up. Now we have to start it. Start NSO. Now this, since I have NSO installed, these commands will very much work in my uh, environment as well. Okay. Created, then NCS setup. Okay. Just showing you that this we are using just for convenience. It's very much same as using your local system. Then I'll start my devices. Let's start my device. So now we have a NSO instance running, and we have there are devices. Now we can connect to NSO application using this command. So this will take us to the CLI, NSO CLI. As which user we are connecting? Admin user. Now this -C at the end says that when I connect to CLI, take me to Cisco style CLI. Right? Where there is another option, Juniper style CLI. So NSO CLI comes both in Juniper style and Cisco style. So if you want to, if you are comfortable with Juniper style, you can say -J, I guess. Right? Otherwise, you say -C, it will take you to Cisco style CLI. Now, okay, it was already started in my case. Yeah. Now, to what I have connected? NCS CLI admin, this one, not to any device, right? I connected to my NSO. I'm not connected to any device yet. Now I'm saying this is that reading operation, right? You already have devices, but your CDB configuration database is empty. So you are telling your NSO to read the configuration from the devices using this command, devices sync from. Now these commands we have to learn. I mean, there is no logic, right? Ideally, I would have expected something like NCS, sync from devices, something like that. But this is the way they chose to write this command, devices sync from, right? The first thing that we want to do is synchronize NSO with our simulated devices. This synchronizes all the configuration in the network into NSO CDB. We can do this using sync from command, right? Devices sync from will see what are the devices it currently has access to. iOS 0 and iOS 1. It extracts the device configuration from that and pushes it into the config. Why does it say no configured devices matching the request? I messed up. They're already started. I'm trying to start again. Oh, are they started? I've stopped. Anyway, we have this. It is here. It is running. So it has synced the device iOS 0. You are getting back the result as true. So both the devices have been synced, which means the configuration from the devices has been extracted and pushed into CDB. Now, whether at any point of time, you can check whether your device configuration is in sync with the CDB or not using this command: devices, device name, check sync. Okay. Result is in sync. Same way this is done for iOS 1, we can do this for iOS 0 as well. So both the devices are in sync, which means on what is there in the config DB and the config which is there on the devices is one and the same. We'll have to do it every time. Every time, I mean, if you have modified the configuration outside of the NSO scope, then you have to do it so that your CDB is in sync. Or if you have added the device afresh, then you have to do it. Not every time. NCS and NSO are one and the same. NSO is the probably they wanted to make it sound more flashy, so they chose the name Network Services Orchestrator. But all the commands are carrying their old name NCS. So that's why you see this NCS hyphen this, NCS hyphen that, NCS underscore this, that. NCS and NSO are one and the same. NCS is old name, NSO is latest name. What is relevance of NetSim with NSO is we need some devices for NSO to manage, right? So that we can learn NSO. And I don't have any devices because I don't have EVentG or this setup where I can connect to my devices via SSH. So what I'm doing, I'm just for practice purposes, I'm using simulated devices. So that's what NetSim is helping me do it. It has created a network with a couple of simulated devices. Now, on which I'm using all the rest of the NSO commands. Okay, now I've synced my devices. Now I'm getting into configuration. Right? So NSO understood what is the existing configuration. Now I'm saying I want to configure these devices. Yes, we did that command, right? This one, create network, Cisco IS. This created 2 devices. And then I learned them using, I started my NCS using this. Right? NCS, I set up my NCS in the current directory by pointing the devices, by pointing it to the directory where these network simulated devices are created. Right? So this command tells that, okay, these are the devices that you need to manage. So this is the way we are informing NSO of the devices. And then we did sync from, which sync the configuration. Now we are making a config change. Can we build a site using NSO script? What do you mean by building a site using NSO script? Okay, network site. The devices should be there, right? I mean, NSO will help you to play with simulated devices, but yes, the basic devices should be there. Then you need to add those devices to NSO, and then you'll be able to start configuring them. See, ultimately, it's a configuration management tool. I'm not sure how ACA site gets built. Probably if I see the steps, probably maybe I'll be able to correlate with the NCS NSO steps and then see whether this can be used for that. Okay, so now I'm ready to start the configuration. So I get into config mode. Again, this config mode is not your network OS config command. This is NSO command. Okay, that's a distinction that's something that we have to. So for hardcore network engineers, there's a bit of unlearning that they have to do before they learn automation using NSO, because we always think about the commands, right? CLI commands. So when they say config, oh, okay, device config. Here it is. This is not the device config command. This is the NSO config command. So we are in NSO config mode and not at any specific thing. Now I'm saying, show me the configuration which is there on iOS 1 device. As I said, I am outside the devices now. I'm not inside any device. So if I want to see the configuration of any device, I have to specify the complete path. Where is my device located? My device is located under this path. Devices, device, iOS 1. So I'm saying show full configuration of this. So it is showing me the configuration of iOS 1. So you see, I have extracted configuration of iOS 1 via NSO. Show full configuration, devices, device, iOS 1 config. Now, this feature is available. Let's say you want to see specific section, right? We can use a pipe, say include, and then specify only the section that you want to see. Right? For example, only the BGP part that you want to see, you can say show full configuration, the entire command / include BGP. Now I want to start changing the configuration. In configuration mode, we can easily change the configuration of the device. First, we change our context to be that of the device we want to modify. Right? As I said, we are outside the device. Let's say we want to change the iOS 0 configuration. So we are getting inside devices, device, iOS 0 config. I have got into this thing. So this is one of the features, right? You can give ad hoc commands. You can, if you want to treat NSO as if you don't want to take full advantage of it, or if you want to, quickly achieve some configuration thing. That's what we are doing. We are directly connecting to the device and getting into the device's config prompt and making any config changes. So we are not really utilizing the power of NSO, but it is possible. Now I'm inside this. I'll again say, okay, show me the configuration. It shows the same. This time you see, I don't have to specify whose configuration, because my context has been changed to device, specific device. Now I can give config command, iOS :hostname, set the host name. Okay, I made a config change. I have set its name. I have set the name of this to NSO Cisco.com. Now, using this command top, right, will take you back. It will get you out of the current context. Okay, because at this prompt, this command is not available. So we have to do top. We go out. Now you can say again show configuration. You're not saying show full configuration. You're just saying show configuration, which means whatever config change that you just made, only that will be shown. Okay. What is the recent change that I made on devices, device iOS 0? What is I made some config change by setting its host name to nso.cisco.com. So you see this, now I have come out of the device context. Now I am at NSO level. When I asked it show configuration, not show full configuration, just show the configuration, which is a command for seeing whatever change I just made to the configuration. It is giving me complete path. On this device iOS 0, you did this config change. Same way, let's say I go to so on device 1, we did this configuration. Now on both the devices, right, make some other configuration change. That is by setting a password. So how do we do on both? Instead of saying devices, device, specific device, you choose star, which is a wildcard character. Devices, device, star, which means on all the devices which are being managed, make this config change. Okay. So since I am doing on both devices, it is not connected to any specific device. Directly it has from being in the NSO context itself, it has modified the configuration. I mean, it made the changes. The configuration has not yet been modified. It just denoted that this is the change I'm going to make. When I say show configuration, you see it is showing the configuration per device, right? So hope you started seeing the power of NSO. I have two devices. On device 1, I change the host name and password. On device 2, I just change the password. Now NSO is maintaining aggregate changes that I have made on all the devices. Yes, selected device, selected section. How can we change only the host name of iOS 0? That's what we just did, right? We just changed the host name of iOS 0. We have to change config for every device. For now, yes, because we are doing the manual approach, we can, this is the way we can say this. Yeah, if you have a common config which needs to be applied on all the devices, we can do this. Start wildcard character. What is difficult? The concept being discussed or the process of changing the config on devices? Yes, we are looking at only at one of the capabilities of NSO. So certainly there is no advantage, but yes, probably here you saw some advantage of NSO. We are going to see some more advantage when we create a service. Yes, here no need to exit config because we didn't go into the device while being inside the NSO context itself, we did it. Okay, so now from outside, I made config change on both the devices. When I say show configuration, it is showing me on device 0. It's showing both the cumulative config changes that I've done on iOS 0 and the one change that I've done on iOS 1. Now, since pushing configuration is always tricky, they have provided something called as dry run mode, which is like yet another check. Okay, before committing the config, commit is the command to take this the config changes and apply them on the devices. Right. So before committing, we want to commit in a dry run mode. Right? This is output format native. We want to show in a native format or this format. So yes, this is the config change. So since we are sure of it, we'll say commit equals set applies. Now you say show config. No configuration changes found. So someone had asked, right, whether NSO is idempotent. Yes, it is. Right? Because the changes have already been applied. Now, even if you say commit now, nothing will happen because there are no changes to be committed. No config settings to be applied. Okay, and then you can come out using your usual end and then exit and come back to the device by using. Okay, that was NSO example where we can use ad hoc commands to change the configuration settings on the devices. As you saw, giving ad hoc commands is not much of use because that you are anyway doing on by going to devices. But one advantage is, as you said, like 100 devices of the same type, you want to set the same settings like password or something, you can do it in one shot using device start. NSO using Git. Git is a source code version control system. So NSO is an application. It's the developers who use Git. Okay, do not get confused between this commit and that commit. Both are commit. I mean, the commit here is different from the commit, the Git commit. Right? Commit here is push the config changes to the devices. Okay. So should we continue? Should we stop here? Is it too heavy? What's the use of NSO? Now with what you learned already, go and check the use cases, come back and tell me what are the advantages of NSO. Okay, we have 1.5 hours into the session and covered pretty good ground. So go back, practice, and then ready. Yeah, we have seen only the ad hoc part of it. Yes, for each device, for each application, commit will have a different meaning. Right? So we need to take that with a pinch of salt. Yeah, some are saying continue, some are saying stop, you need to practice. Okay, we'll do this then. We'll stop NSO here and quickly revise Terraform because some people missed the previous class. How to get more info on NSO CLI documentation. Network. Okay. No, that was covered in the FAQs, right? And no recordings. By default, LSO doesn't have a GUI, but I think someone has built a GUI on top of it. But I think it's a GitHub project. There's a GitHub project which has built a GUI for LSO. Not sure if it's a Cisco approved GUI or not. Yes, document will be shared soon after this class. Have we not covered the ACI example? Yeah, someone has created GUI, but not sure if it is by Cisco. Okay, a quick review of NSO. Okay. Yeah. Let's see. Let me just open the system where ACI is installed. We will cover the Terraform review with ACI. Terraform is also the same, right? Terraform can be used wherever there are providers. Terraform, just like how we have NADs here, Python has libraries, ACI has, Ansible has modules, right? Terraform has providers. So if there is a SP provider for Terraform, it can work with that. Now ACI guys have, Cisco Devnet guys have written a provider for ACI, which means the provider understands Terraform language as well as he is like the translator. He understands Terraform on one side and ACI on the other side. So we can, using Terraform, we can create some, we can manage infrastructure on ACI. So in SP context, if you have some such infrastructure provisioning for which some provider has been created, then Terraform can work with it. Okay. Yes. Okay. So basically, for the people who have missed the session, right, Terraform is another automation tool. It is classified as IAC tool, infrastructure as code, which means to provision or to procure infrastructure, we can write code in a declarative fashion. Declarative means you see the file which is in front of you. I'm just saying I need a ACI tenant called as I need an ACI tenant to be created. Name as okay. So I don't tell Terraform what are the steps involved, how to connect to the ACI instance, where to go, what to do. I don't tell all that, right? I simply say, this is my ACI instance. Right? I think we covered the concept of variables, right? Specifying the variables in a variable file and then using them in Terraform script. So if not, I can parameterize my Terraform configuration files to read data from somewhere else, so that I can give inputs to my script instead of hard coding values into my script. So I put my user and password in a variables file. I've created this is the way to declare a variable. I can pass the variables values for these variables either on the command line, or I can declare them as default. If no value has been passed, by default take this. And this is my URL where ACI is installed. So that's all we need to tell Terraform, right? I'll be using a provider called as ACI, which is declared here. First, I need to tell Terraform where is the ACI provider located. This is the path on the Terraform registry. Terraform has a public repository called as registry. It is similar to your Docker Hub or Python package indexer pip or Ansible Galaxy, right? Where people have uploaded their public these things. So same way, Terraform has public registry where under this path you have the ACI provider. So I'm telling I'm going to need ACI provider. So Terraform, there are so many hundreds and thousands of providers for Terraform to be able to do different things. Like Terraform can create cloud resources on AWS, Azure, GCP. So the providers for them are all different. And for Azure, you have Azure provider. For AWS, you have AWS provider. So when you download Terraform, it doesn't come bundled with all these providers. You need to separately install the providers as and when you need. And so that's what we are doing here. In this specific project, which is to do with ACI, I'll be using Cisco Devnet ACI. So I'm just telling I am going to need this. Then later in the process of initialization, Terraform is going to fetch this from the repository and from the public registry and install it in my local system. Then once that is installed, I'll be referring to this, saying that yes, I'm going to use this ACI instance. Now, since this is a web application, I need details to connect to it. So I specified the URL, I specified the username and password. This is okay. There's an additional parameter, right? If the target site is HTTPS enabled, should it allow insecure connections to it or not? So you're just saying allow it. Okay. So having done this, all I can do now is start creating resources. Right? In case of Docker, we had seen that what is the type of resource, right? Resource Docker_image, and then we give a local name to that image. Then the second resource is resource Docker_container. So always the type of resources are going to be like type of the provider name underscore the type of the resource. So there it was Docker was the provider, and the resource we are trying to create is image. So we said Docker_image. Here ACI is the provider, is the tenant that we are going to create. So we say resource ACI tenant. And this name is like local name. Locally within this file, this tenant will be referred to as tenant. And this name is the name of the name with which a tenant is going to be created in ACI. Right? To create ACI tenant, what we need? What is the mandatory field? Only name. Rest all description, annotation. These are all optional fields. How will you know that? Go to the documentation. Terraform ACI. So we have all the things. I'll say ACI. So how to create a tenant, ACI tenant using Terraform, resource, ACI tenant, the name with which you want to refer to this in the file, and the parameters that need to be passed to this are name, description, annotation, alias. This name is what with which the tenant will be created in ACI. And if you look at this, the description of these parameters, name is required, which means this is mandatory. The rest all are optional. That's why in our script, we just pass the name and left other things. This is all we need to be able to connect to this ACI instance using this username password. Go ahead and create this tenant. For that, we'll just check that this tenant does not already exist. Okay, there are some T2, T3, T4 production, but the name which I have given is not there. What's the password for Epic? It doesn't matter because it's my instance. The password for your instance will differ. How to get this code? How to get this code from the documentation? Yes, you have to write this code. The help is there. For example, here we are trying to work with ACI. Right? You click on this, use provider. You get how to write this. Terraform, require providers, ACI, and the source, and provider, ACI, this configuration options. Here we need to specify then your resources. If you want to create a tenant, search for this. Under resources section, you will get this. If you want to create, let's say, application profile. Application EPG, application profile. Now, ACI's organization is like tenant is at the top level. Right? First, you create a tenant. Tenant can be thought of as, if it's a cloud environment, each tenant can be thought of as an organization. Now, if you're implementing ACI within an organization, tenants can be like different divisions, different groups, sub-organizations, and so on. And everything that you create should be inside some tenant. So under this tenant, you are creating an application profile, which means for creating this application profile, you should have tenant created first, and the reference to that tenant should be made like this. Tenant underscore TN will be the name that we created with ACI underscore tenant dot whatever name we gave there. In the previous principle, I think we have given the name as example. Dot ID. which will uniquely identify that. And then the names which are required for me to create application. Again, it depends on what is mandatory. So again, it is tenant DN is mandatory, name is mandatory. Rest all are optional. Okay, for those people who are finding this totally this thing, let's use the talk. Terraform is an infrastructure as a code tool. It helps us to create, modify, and destroy infrastructure. Infrastructure, we refer to infrastructure in terms of resources. Resources are like the components of the infrastructure that we are trying to create and manage. Those are the resource tags that we have seen in the script. It can manage both low-level resources like compute, storage, and networking, and high-level resources as well. How to install? It's very simple. It's just executable. Download it and add it to your path. How does it work? As I said, it uses the concept of providers, which are like agents, which are pretty much similar to what we have already seen in other cases. HashiCorp is the company which created this. Right? There's thousands of providers out there. And for major these things, you already have providers for Docker, Cisco, AWS, Azure. Now, how we go about is we write a configuration script by using the kind of syntax that I just showed you. We specify which provider I'm going to use, then reference to that provider, any configuration settings to be passed to the provider, and then a list of resources that I want to create using that provider. So that is the write part. After writing, just like how we had done commit dry run, there's a plan which will show me what I intend to do in my script. So I say Terraform plan. It shows me what the configuration script is going to create or destroy or modify. Then I'll say, if I'm satisfied with the plan, I'll say apply the plan, which means go ahead and make those changes to the underlying system. The resource blocks we have just seen how to create. Those resource blocks are like resource, the tenant, the type of the resource, and the resource local name. Inside that, you specify what are the parameters which are required. What are the inputs which are required for the device, for that tenant, for that resource to be created. Syntax we have seen the script. Providers we have already discussed. Then Terraform config example. Docker example. So we say Terraform. This is like the starting point. Whenever we are specifying the required providers, we say Terraform required providers. This is the name I am giving. Right? I choose to call this provider as Docker. And this is the source where it comes from the Terraform registry, and this is the specific version which I want to take. Then I refer to this name here, saying that yes, the provider which I initialize from this section is what I'm planning to use. And for Docker, there are no config settings because it's not like a web application which you need to use username, password, and create. It's a backend daemon. It's always running, so you don't need any specific configuration settings to be specified here. Then start creating your resources. The first, now Docker organization is like image and the container. So first you create the image, then create the container by pointing to this image. So this name that we give here comes handy here. To refer to that, right? And then we say then we create the container. Container requires some ports to be exposed depending on what type of. Here I'm using a web application as a container, so it requires some ports to be opened. Once I do that, I say init. This init will actually download the provider from Terraform registry into local. Once I do that, I say Terraform plan. It just goes to the config file and shows me what it intends to do. Once I'm satisfied, I say Terraform apply. Then the resources will be created. Once I finish working with them, if I want to destroy, I'll say Terraform destroy. So this is like a complete life cycle or complete workflow. Same thing we are trying to do on ACI. So ACI required providers, ACI use the ACI provider by specifying the details to connect to it, and then start specifying the resources that you want to create. Open a terminal. Where am I? Terraform. Here are my scripts. So I'll say Terraform. So it has downloaded. Terraform has successfully been initialized. Since I already have it installed, you can fetch it afresh. Then I say Terraform plan. So it has showed me okay, my script has okay, yeah. It is saying it is going to delete some things. So okay, what my previous configuration, what exists in the system, and what I'm trying to do has been changed. So it is saying there's some changes. We detect some changes. It's okay. You don't have to. Have I not saved this file? No, that's why it is showing. It's not saved. Yeah. Now, in my actual system, right, I had those tenants T2, T3, T4, but those tenants are now missing from my configuration file. I only have one tenant. So it has understood that, okay, 4 tenants I don't need anymore. It is, I'm planning to delete them. So it is showing me I'm going to delete, I'm going to create one new tenant and destroy 3 existing tenants because they are there in your underlying infrastructure, but you have not mentioned them in your config file. Okay. So I'll say, okay, I'm fine with it. I'll say apply. Again, it shows me the plan, asking me to confirm. I say yes. Just deleted 3 tenants and created a new tenant. If I go to this thing now and refresh, I'll see that those tenants are gone and this tenant which I've created. This Terraform lab we cannot perform. No, this is on a special VM which access to this cannot be. That's one of the reasons why I didn't probably actively cover ACI, because you need a separate ACI setup to test this. Terraform is like Ansible. Is it open source option for NSO? You're mixing too many things, Terraform and Ansible. Terraform comes one step before Ansible, right? Ansible is a configuration management tool. Terraform is an infrastructure as a code tool. To be able to manage the configuration, first you need the infrastructure. So you use Terraform to procure that infrastructure. Then you can use Ansible to manage its configuration. Okay. So that way, Terraform and Ansible are similar, but yes, they complement each other. Now, NSO is different ballgame on it. Can Terraform be used for basic routing switching scenario? No. Again, I mean, what do you want to do with it, right? This is infrastructure that we are talking about. Right? So if you are talking about, let's say, procuring a switch, so I'm not sure what are the steps involved for it, but if there is a provider which can do that, yes, Terraform can do it. Terraform is like your Uber app. right? Uber app can only help you to book the cabs. It's up to the cab guy should be there. He should come to your place whether to serve your purpose. Configuring IP address. No, these are all come under the configuration, specifically network configuration. So NSO is more ideal for this thing. Terraform is more for provisioning infrastructure. How do you log in ACI as a physical lab? I get that question, but yes, ACI is a web application, so I know the username password for it, so I log in. Nginx is working as web servers. Yes, Nginx it can serve both the purposes of a web server as well as a reverse proxy. XML JSON are used in ACI automation as Terraform capable enough to carry out the same level of automation which XML and JSON are just data interchange formats. So Terraform also supports JSON, like the configuration file that I have written. Its syntax is slightly different. It looks like JSON, but it's not JSON. It's called as, it's a HashiCorp's its own custom language called as HCL, HashiCorp configuration language. But it also supports JSON. It does not support XML though. So we are putting Nginx inside a Docker container. We're not putting, it's already been put, so we are just fetching it. We're just pulling the container, Docker container with Nginx in it. Every time you add a tenant, is it going to destroy the earlier ones? No. Right? It all depends on your configuration file. And since with my previous config file, I created those devices, those tenants. And I modified the same configuration file. I removed the previous ones and put a new name. So obviously Terraform understands that, okay, you don't need the earlier ones anymore. Now if I with my tenant 1 being there, if I say add one more tenant, my tenant 2, it doesn't do anything for the my tenant 1. It just goes and adds my tenant. Were those tenants treated? No, they were created using Terraform. That they were part of TF state. That's why they got deleted. R&D provisioning infra by providing in the Terraform script. Yes. Like building 10 switches network. I've not seen a provider for provisioning your network switches, but if it is there, yes, then very much we can do it. But what we have done with provisioning those 10 switches using NSO is not, it's not using Terraform to that. Is there a document for Terraform that can be put? There's some basic steps. Whatever I just discussed, I put in the same document. So when I send today's version, you will also get the basic steps that I have described there. But Terraform documentation is the best place, right, to learn Terraform. There's some of those basic Docker and other examples. For CCIE level, what you learned is enough, right? In terms of Terraform, how to manage ACI resources, and from NSO, what we learned is the addo command. When we complete the other parts, right? Network part, that should be enough for your DevNet tasks. Ansible, yes, Terraform and NSO, yes. Ansible is very less. It's not used much. Was a real life use case for Terraform? People generally use Terraform for creating cloud resources like your Azure VMs. Azure networking services, Azure storage services, Azure or Google Cloud or AWS. Those are the more real-life use cases. How you log into ACI? By providing username, password, and URL in the variable section, in the provider section as config details. I'm using provider ACI. Now ACI is a web application, so it needs URL, username, and password, which have been defined in my variables file. Okay, we'll wrap it up here.